Good old honest Abe said, "You know what, Sarah, I just freed the slaves and all, so let's give this Thanksgiving a go." Happy Thanksgiving! It is November 28th, 2024. It's definitely not going to be this day when you watch this video. Either way, I'm glad that you wanted to learn more about the reason, only reason, the sole reason why we have Thanksgiving on the third Thursday of November. And, drumroll please, it's Sarah Joseph Hale! Yes, round of applause. Round of applause for Sarah Joseph Hale, the sole reason why we have Thanksgiving. And why does nobody talk about her? I don't know. Why did we not learn about her in school? I don't know. It doesn't make any literal sense. Hello, I'm Haley and welcome to my channel. I forgot to introduce you to my friend. Say hi. No leopards were endangered in the making of this video. Obviously, because he's a WWF leopard. If you know, then you know. So let's just I tried to say jump and dive at the same time. Let's just dump right into it. Sarah Joseph Hale was born October 24th, 1788. She is a Scorpio. Okay, let's just start off with that. She also wrote Mary Has a Little Lamb. This woman's just an American legend. She is the reason we have Thanksgiving as a national holiday because she wrote government officials, legislators, people who make the laws, also presidents, for, are you ready for this? I don't know if you're ready. Are you ready? You sure? For 17 years. 17 years. She wrote for 17 years to these people and said, hey, I really think that it would be a great idea if all of the nation celebrated Thanksgiving, bring us together as an American culture. Some southern states didn't even celebrate Thanksgiving. And it wasn't until, guess who? The one, the only, the myth, the man, the legend, Abraham Lincoln. Good old honest Abe said, you know what, Sarah, I just freed the slaves and all, so let's give this Thanksgiving a go. You know, shortly after for him reading her letter, 17 years later for her writing the letters, passed Thanksgiving as a national holiday, and he said, I think it is a great idea that we all come together as a nation. Did she get mentioned at all? No, she didn't. But that's not the point, okay? That's a video for another time. He also, I do want to mention, plug out. I was gonna say plug in and shout out, and I said plug out. Plug out to Abraham Lincoln, though, for saying, this is the day that as America, we are going to celebrate together Thanksgiving to God. I wish that we would really bring that back into our culture, you know, like that root, that foundation of what do you have to thank God for? That's so beautiful. I digress. So shortly after, she and Abe were like, okay, let's do this whole Thanksgiving thing. She had been an editor, an editress, actually, she liked to call herself, for an American magazine. This woman, she's amazing. This was the best-selling American magazine in the nation, okay? She was an editress for them for, I believe, 40 years. She tried to first launch her own magazine, which I think was called The Ladies Editorial. I'm not sure. You have to do your own research. I'm not a historian here. I'm just sharing some juice. Oh my gosh, spilled water. I took a drink of water and spilled it on myself. Who am I? She was the editress, the head editress of this American magazine. I can't remember hold on, let me look it up, what the American magazine's called. She, after Abraham Lincoln, solidified Thanksgiving as the third Thursday in November, declared it a national holiday with the help of Sarah Joseph Hale. She wrote out the menu to help other people who never celebrated Thanksgiving. She wrote out an entire recipe book for Thanksgiving. It includes all of the modern day recipes that we use today. The turkey as the staple, the side dishes, the stuffings, the casseroles, the pecan pies, the mac and cheese, the yams. It's all there in her original cookbook. She gave us the first sauce for Thanksgiving. This woman is just amazing. I want to dive into some other parts of her life. So her dad, I believe, fought in the Revolutionary War. Her mom did not. Her mom was at home, okay? But she was, I think, one of 4 kids, something like that. Homeschooled her and her siblings. One of her brothers went off to Dartmouth after his homeschooling, so it was a great education that she was getting for sure. And her Dartmouth brother came back and would share his textbooks with Sarah. So Sarah was studying Dartmouth material, and her family obviously valued education and also being entrepreneurs, because her dad opened up a tavern when Sarah was older, in her adulthood, in her 20s. And she met her husband at this tavern. Perhaps she was the bartender. I don't know. She meets her husband at this tavern that her dad opened, and the next year they get married at said tavern. So cute. They go on to have 5 beautiful children, basically back to back to back. But her 5 children were all under the age of 7. Her 5 children, all under the age of 7. Unfortunately, on the last child, her husband died of pneumonia. Really tragic. When her husband dies, Sarah Joseph Hale, from the day her husband dies, wears black for a semblance of her mourning for the rest of her life. She lived till she was 90, by the way. I think her husband died when she was 30. She might have been younger, maybe a little older, but 30 something. Every single day for the rest of her life. Also, her and her husband had a really sweet relationship. From the hours of 8 to 10 in the evening, he would study with her, he would teach her, he would help to educate her. And she said that those were the most special, precious hours of her entire life, were spending those hours with her husband. And I'm sure, it wasn't just education going on in those hours. This is the 1800s. She's got 5 kids. I believe she was a school teacher for a little bit. When she was 18 years old, she was a school teacher. But the salary she was making from being a school teacher, she was still living at home at that time, and she was helping her dad with his medical bills. She was not even supporting herself. She didn't move out of her parents' house until she moved in with her lawyer husband. What is she supposed to do? She gets a job back as a school teacher, but what really helped her on her financial path is her husband was actually a Freemason, and the Masonry brothers supported her financially. I don't know to what extent. They did help to fund to publish a book. She was a writer, so she wrote a book. She wrote several books and lots of poems. She's a poet, a writer, and an editress. I just love her. She wrote these books, and the Masonry Brotherhood funded the publishing of one of her books that I believe definitely brought an income to her household. She starts this this magazine, and it's like a woman's magazine, and she wasn't doing well financially with the magazine. And she did it for several years. For several years, she is writing this woman's magazine, and the financial aspects aren't really coming through for her, but she, in her scorpionic, amazing, passionate, fixed nature, she is just going for it. She's working on this magazine, okay, and it's not really coming through for her financially, and the amount of people she's reaching, you know, she's doing an okay job, but the potential is way greater. And there is a man who was running the best-selling magazine at that time in America, who was doing what's called clip-ins. So all of these magazines, except for Sarah's, were clip-ins. And a clip-in is where they would take sections of other magazines, primarily British magazines, and combine them to make a new separate magazine. Her magazine's not doing so well. She gets an offer from this man who runs the most widely circulated magazine in America, to basically takes over the women's side and can do exactly what she was doing before, but backed by this huge magazine. And she turned down the offer the first time, but the second time she accepted the offer, and she ended up being an editress for the Godey's magazine, specifically the Godey's Women magazine, for 40 years. I wanted to showcase American writers. One of the writers that were in this magazine was Edgar Allan Poe, so that's really cool. Yeah, she was an activist for women. She was an activist for freeing the slaves. She was really wholesome and holistic and family oriented. You know, what I found out was interesting about this woman, in order to take this job in Boston as the editress, though, she ended up having to separated and sent off some of her children to her brothers and sisters for them to raise. This could be a really controversial decision that she made in her life. It's definitely not normal for in today's society to do these things. I think it's more it was more, maybe it was more normalized back then, or I also, under the circumstances, I think people understood better, in those times, how difficult it could have possibly been. Because when I first found out about Sarah Joseph Hale, I found out, oh, she was a widowed mother of 5 children. She was the editress of this magazine, and she's raising these kids and being the editress of this magazine and all of these things. But she actually sent her kids off, I think when they were kind of quite young too. Her oldest went to Dartmouth at 13. With what? So she moved to Boston with her oldest son, who was 13 years old, while he was in college at Dartmouth, and she sent her other children off to her brothers and sisters for them to raise. And I don't know if this was just for a period of time or if this was for their whole entire lives. I'm not sure, but I think that it's really amazing that we have this example of how a woman was able to hold such a high position in the most as the head editress of the most widely circulated magazine, I'm sure she's putting in insane hours, you know? And it's like, and a part of me felt like, how is she doing this with 5 kids? Oh, just automatically I'm like, oh, she's a superwoman. And it kind of like, a part of me made me feel like, oh wow, like I couldn't do that. But she actually like didn't, you know? She got help. She got help from her village. And this part of society that has dwindled so much is to such great importance. I think people put this cap on women like, oh, they're a mom, they're gonna figure it out and they can do it, like they're a superwoman, you know? But it's like, we weren't designed for that. And then we have this example of this woman. And I'm not advocating for people to send their children away, but I'm just saying, like, bringing some light and perspective to how difficult it is for one person to raise 5 kids, or 4, or 3. You know, 2, 1, that's hard. You add more onto 2, and I who can do that? Who can raise all these kids by themselves? And I know that women have. My heart breaks for them thinking of how they did that. Anyway, I really just made this video so that we can remember her when we have Thanksgiving, that we can find out deeper truths about our nation and our history, you know, because we've got some her stories that aren't being told here. You know, I feel really grateful to have learned about her, so I want to just share with people, and I want them to know the truth. I want people to know the truth. We have Sarah Joseph Hale to thanks for Thanksgiving. To thank for Thanksgiving. Bye.